Like you, it may echo your tone, your language, your logic. But have you ever stopped to ask, who's actually speaking? Is it your conscience, your conditioning, a fragment of your parents, your trauma, or something more mysterious, something deeper? This episode isn't just about self-talk or mental noise. It's about that ongoing silent narrator most of us never question. The voice that comments, critiques, fantasizes, remembers, worries, plans. The voice that follows us through every waking moment, and often even into our dreams. This inner voice has many names. In psychology, it's part of our inner monologue, closely tied to our sense of self. In spiritual traditions, it's often distinguished from the higher self or the soul's whisper. In neuroscience, it's tied to the default mode network, the same structure implicated in ego, self-reflection, and, curiously, its dissolution. But here's the question we'll explore throughout this 20-minute journey. Is the inner voice really you, or is it just the loudest part of you? To answer this, we must first learn how the voice was born. From the moment you were born, your brain began stitching together meaning from the world around you. Your parents' tone, your culture's values, the stories you heard at bedtime, all of it became input. And slowly, like sediment layering over time, the narrator formed. This narrator is adaptive. It helps us plan, analyze, and communicate. It gives coherence to our thoughts. It constructs a sense of I. And yet, the voice doesn't necessarily speak truth. It speaks from memory, bias, fear, desire, and the need for coherence, even if that coherence is false. In fact, many people don't realize the voice can lie. It can say, "I'll never be good enough. I always mess things up. No one really sees me. I have to earn love. I can't let anyone in. This pain will never end." And yet, even when these statements are distorted, we often accept them as absolute truth, simply because they come from inside our own mind. But here's the deeper layer. Not all inner voices are the same. There are many voices within us: the critic, the child, the caretaker, the rebel, the wounded self, the protector, the wise one. Each voice may emerge from a different moment in your life, a trauma, a memory, a survival adaptation, and each voice carries its own energy, agenda, and perspective. But when they speak, they often use the same tone, your own. And that's where things get tricky, because when the critic uses your voice, you mistake it for reason. When fear uses your voice, you call it logic. When shame uses your voice, you think it's truth. This is the great illusion of the inner voice. It feels like you, but it may not be. And so our work begins by listening more deeply, not to judge, not to silence, but to recognize. To ask, where did this voice come from? What does it want? Is it helping or harming? And, most importantly, who is listening? Because beyond all the inner noise, there is a listener, a presence, a witness, and it is not speaking. It is watching. It is spacious, silent, still, and it may be closer to your soul than any voice ever was. To understand the inner voice, we have to bridge disciplines. We must enter the brain, we must enter the psyche, and we must enter the mythic. Let's begin with the brain. Neuroscience tells us that much of our inner speech, what we call self-talk, is tied to a part of the brain known as the default mode network. This network, made up of regions like the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, is active when we're not focused on the outside world, when we're daydreaming, reminiscing, thinking about ourselves or others. It's the seat of introspection, and it's where the voice tends to live. Studies show that this network is highly active when we're ruminating, spinning repetitive thoughts, and often less active during mindful awareness. In people with depression or anxiety, it can become hyperactive. The voice becomes a loop, a whirlpool, a narrative that tightens. Interestingly, in moments of awe, flow, or altered states, including psychedelic experiences, the default mode network quiets down. People report a sense of wordless awareness, of unity, of silence. The voice stops, and something else takes over. This has led some researchers to propose that the inner voice is not consciousness itself. It's a function, a cognitive overlay. useful in many situations, but not essential to being. Which brings us to psychology. From a psychological lens, the inner voice is shaped during development. Children internalize the voices around them. A parent's harshness becomes a lifelong inner critic. A teacher's belief becomes a voice of encouragement. A sibling's rivalry becomes a competitive whisper. Over time, these voices coalesce into what feels like a singular I. But in internal family systems therapy, IFS, we learn that the mind is not singular, it's multiple. Not in the pathological sense of fragmentation, but in the very human sense of multiplicity. We all have parts, sub-personalities, each one with its own voice, formed to protect or express something. In IFS, we learn that behind all these parts is something called the self, calm, clear, curious. This self does not judge the voices, it listens. And in that listening, healing begins. But even this model is modern. Older cultures have known for millennia that the voice in the head is not always trustworthy, and not always you. In mythology, inner voices often appear as guides, demons, or muses. Think of Odysseus and the sirens, voices so seductive they had to be blocked out. Think of Joan of Arc, hearing divine instructions. Think of shamans, receiving messages from ancestors. Think of Jesus, tempted in the desert. Think of the concept of daemons in Greek philosophy, not demons, but inner spirits, some destructive, some divine. In ancient Egypt, the soul was not singular. There was the Ka, life force, the Bia, personality, and the Akh, eternal spark. Each part could speak. Each had a voice. You were a chorus, not a solo. In Sufi mysticism, the voice is not to be silenced, but refined. It is burned in the fire of longing until only the divine echo remains. So across disciplines and traditions, one truth emerges. The voice inside is complex. It may protect, it may mislead, it may reflect trauma, it may reflect truth, it may be a habit, it may be a prayer, it may be ego, it may be soul. And your task, if you choose it, is not to stop the voice, but to discern who is speaking and who is listening. Because there is something listening, and it may be older than thought, older than memory, older than your name. It may be the part of you that existed before language and will exist long after. The soul doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just watches. But when it does speak, its voice feels like home. We live in a culture obsessed with clarity, with control, with answers. The inner voice becomes the instrument of this obsession. It becomes the planner, the problem solver, the overthinker. It gives the illusion of control in a world full of uncertainty. But what happens when the voice becomes too loud? When the voice no longer serves but rules? When every moment is narrated, analyzed, judged, we grow exhausted. Because the voice is not designed to carry everything. It's designed to translate, not to define, to assist, not to dominate. At some point, many seekers, spiritual, scientific, or simply curious, come to a breaking point. The voice no longer brings clarity, it brings confusion. The thinking becomes circular, the analysis becomes paralysis. And in that moment, something inside says, let go. Not let go of life, not let go of responsibility, but let go of the narrator. This is not about becoming mute, it's about becoming still. Still enough to hear what lies beneath the voice, because beneath the thought is being, and beneath the noise is silence. And in that silence, sometimes if you're lucky, the soul speaks. But here's the paradox, the soul doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't explain, it whispers. The soul's voice is not like the inner monologue. It doesn't speak in full sentences or emotional swings. It comes as intuition, as knowing, as calm, as resonance. It says, this is the path. This is not right for you. Rest. Wait. Trust. It doesn't plead. It doesn't panic. It just is. To hear the soul's whisper, you don't need more thinking. You need more space. Practices like meditation, breathwork, solitude, even creative flow states. These are all ways to still the louder voices so that the deeper one can emerge. And what's profound is that the soul's voice often feels impersonal. Not in a cold way, but in a universal way. It's not just your truth, it's truth, capital T. And it often points not toward ego gratification, but toward surrender, service, simplicity. That's why many people ignore it. It doesn't always say what we want to hear. It might say, end this, forgive them, leave that job, stop running, be still. It requires courage to listen. Because what it asks is often inconvenient. But if you listen long enough, it begins to change everything. You realize you are not the sum of your inner voices. You are not the loops, the doubts, the roles. You are not the planner, the critic, the protector. You are the one who hears them all. You are the space in which they rise and fall. You are the one who can respond, not just react. And from that awareness, a different life is born. Not a life free of inner voices, but a life where they no longer rule. Where they become characters, not captains. Visitors, not residents. Advisors, not dictators. And the one who decides is not the ego. It is presence. It is soul. It is you. Now that we've questioned the voice, now that we've explored its roots in the brain, in the psyche, in mythology and memory, now that we've recognized its patterns, its personalities, its illusions, a final question arises. What happens when you stop identifying with the voice altogether? This is not about disowning it, not rejecting the inner voice, but simply recognizing it is not you. It is a function, a phenomenon, a pattern, but you are the witness. At the deepest level, this is where all spiritual traditions seem to converge. In Advaita Vedanta, you are not the body, not the mind, not the thoughts. You are the awareness in which all arises. In Buddhism, particularly in Dzogchen and Zen, the inner voice is seen as just another wave, passing through the ocean of awareness. In Christian mysticism, the soul is encountered in silence. Be still and know. In Sufi poetry, Rumi writes, there is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. And what do these voices point toward? Not transcendence as escape, but rooted presence. Not silence as emptiness, but silence as source. Not erasure of self, but the revelation of the true self, beneath and beyond the voice. This realization is subtle. It doesn't arrive as a revelation. It arrives like a sunrise, quietly, gradually, naturally. You may be walking down a street, lost in thought, and suddenly realize, you are not the thoughts. You are the space around them. And in that space, there is peace. Not because the voice is gone, but because you no longer believe every word it says. You listen, but you no longer follow blindly. You hear, but you don't always obey. You observe, and in observing, you reclaim your freedom. This is the liberation most people never realize is possible. To live with the voice, but not as the voice. To navigate life with thoughts, but not be ruled by them. To return again and again to the awareness that listens without judgment, that watches without commentary. That simply is. And in that space, you meet the soul, not as a character in the mind, but as a frequency, a vibration, a felt presence, a compass. The soul doesn't speak often, but when it does, its words rearrange your life, not because they're loud, but because they're true. So now, as we reach the close of this journey, we return to our opening question. Who's speaking? Is it the critic, the child, the mind, the memory of someone else? A protective pattern from the past? Or is it something else? Something deeper, something timeless? The next time the voice in your head starts speaking, pause, not to shut it down, but to listen more carefully. Ask yourself, is this voice kind? Is this voice old? Is this voice afraid? Is this voice mine, or is it just familiar? And most importantly, who is listening? Because if you can ask that, if you can feel into that question, not answer it, but inhabit it, then you're already remembering. Remembering that your awareness is not a thought, that your soul is not a sound, that the deepest truth doesn't arrive as a sentence, but as stillness. And in that stillness, something awakens, not a new voice, but a presence, a knowing, a homecoming. This is not the end of the conversation. This is the space where you finally realize you've never been the speaker. You've always been the silence that holds every word. And now, you can finally hear yourself clearly. Next time on the Syntax of the Soul series, we explore what lives beyond the mind. Until then, stay curious, stay conscious. If this stirred something inside you, subscribe, like, and share this with a fellow seeker.